We are making it live now. All speakers are in. We are all live now, ladies and gentlemen. Very, very warm welcome to all of you on this afternoon. In Delhi, the weather has taken a very pleasant turn, even as we continue to struggle to get the pandemic situation under control. A very, very warm welcome to you. Good evening, India. Good afternoon, Europe. Good morning elsewhere. Excellencies, distinguished panelists, friends from India and all over the world, ladies and gentlemen. It's delightful to see so many people from different geographies at this important virtual conversation on the future trajectory of the multifaceted partnership between the two largest democratic spaces in the world, India and the European Union. When we talk about India and the European Union, we are talking about close to 1.8 billion people. And in terms of sheer economic weight, India and the EU put together accounts for something like $21 trillion GDP. It's enormously gratifying for me to see so many friends from India, Europe, and other geographies who have found time to be with us today. We are live streaming this webinar on important platforms, Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter of India Rights Network. If you have difficulty in accessing it on any one platform, please move to another platform. We are extremely fortunate and privileged to see such a stellar cast of distinguished speakers to discuss issues relating to the India-EU partnership. Allow me to briefly mention them. His Excellency Ugo Astuto, Ambassador of EU to India. Her Excellency Romana Blahutin, EU's Ambassador at Large for Connectivity. Dear friend Mr. Sandeep Chakrabarti, Joint Secretary Europe West, Ministry of External Affairs, India. His Excellency Vincenzo Di Luca, Italy's Ambassador to India. His Excellency Freddy Swan, Denmark's Ambassador to India. His Excellency Carlos Pereira Marques, Portugal's Ambassador to India. I will introduce them in greater detail when I ask them to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, before I start and dive into the main theme of the conference, a few words about our organization and myself. My name is Manish Chand. I'm founder and CEO of India Rights Network, an emerging think tank and publishing media platform focused on international affairs. We also publish India and the World, a magazine journal that has carved a niche among the diplomatic and strategic community in India. We have recently set up Center for Global India Insights, a think tank that focuses on geopolitics and actionable foreign policy analysis. Our core areas of activities include IR research, publishing, media, and conferencing. In the past few months, we organized many well-appreciated and well-attended webinars on mapping next steps in India-Africa partnership, from G7 to G11, India-Italy partnership, future of India-US relations under President Joe Biden, and the way forward for India-Bangladesh relations, just to mention a few. We also co-hosted webinars with our partners, the High Commission of Canada and India, on topical themes, portrayal of environment-related issues in the media separately. These webinars were marked by the participation of eminent speakers and unfettered discussion. We hope that our webinar today on the India-EU relations will live up to our reputation and raise the bar for informed discussions on foreign policy issues. Ladies and gentlemen, now let me come to the master theme of the webinar, India-EU 2.0, New Synergies, New Horizons. By all reckoning, the India-EU leaders meeting on May 8, 2021 was a pivotal moment and an inspired exercise in transformational diplomacy. In a unique gesture that underscored the rising importance of India in the EU's foreign policy calculus, the leaders meeting was the first ever summit between the two largest democratic spaces in the 27+1 format. It's only the second time the EU had such a 27 plus summit with any other country after the United States. The optics were captivating. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had a virtual face-to-face interaction with leaders of 27 European nations, as well as Charles Michel, President of the European Council, and Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission. There were many special and memorable gestures. The Portuguese port city of Porto was lit up in the colors of the Indian flag. Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo greeted Prime Minister Modi with Kemsho in Gujarati. And Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Costa, the presence of all leaders, proudly flaunted his Overseas Citizen of India card. It wasn't just spectacle and convivial virtual chatter, though, but the summit resulted in a string of defining steps that is going to scale up India-EU partnership to a higher stratosphere. What we are calling today the 2.0 version. This 2.0 version of the India-EU strategic partnership will include, among others, a transformational and balanced FTA, enhanced international coordination, and a landmark connectivity partnership that involves partnering in joint infrastructure projects in third countries. The summit's other key outcomes included setting up of a task force on artificial intelligence and a joint working group on resilient supply chains. In other words, the first 27 plus 1 summit has raised the bar and set new benchmarks for the India-EU economic and strategic partnership. But looking ahead, the real challenge lies in time-bound implementation of key outcomes, as this alone can fructify benefits of India-EU partnership for people of the two sides. The discussions today are designed to precisely achieve this. Picking the brains of some of our finest diplomats from India and EU and strategic experts to chart an actionable roadmap for advancing the 2025 India-EU agenda. Here I would like to urge each speaker to come out with specific concrete suggestions and initiatives which will enable us to add more heft and substance to this blossoming partnership. I would also urge this speaker to come out with some new ideas to scale up visibility and projection of the multifaceted India-EU partnership across the spectrum. This is important as despite the growing partnership, there is limited public awareness of the EU as an institution in India and Europe in general, beyond a few beautiful touristy countries. The burgeoning partnership, in the end, between the two normative powers dedicated to promoting rules-based international order will not only benefit over 1.8 billion people living in India and EU countries, but also the region and the world. Before I request our keynote speaker, the ambassador of EU to India to speak, let me briefly outline some housekeeping rules. To our audience, you can type in your questions, comments in the Facebook and YouTube link with your name and designation. Our team will collect it and will pose it to the speaker when we come to the audience round. You can also send questions to indiarightsgroup.gmail.com. We also encourage you to tweet about the webinar so that we reach out to a larger audience. Please do not forget to tag at the rate of India Rights TGII on Twitter handle. And my request to media person, journalists who are attending this webinar, that we really appreciate some coverage of the webinar in your respective media platforms. Thanks so much to all of you for finding time for this. Now it's my pleasure and honor to introduce His Excellency, EU's Ambassador to India, Ugo Astuto. Excellency, are you there? Yeah. His Excellency, Ambassador Ugo Astuto has been a very dynamic force in propelling this new phase of India-EU partnership. Just to briefly describe his illustrious career, he entered the Italian diplomatic service in 1991. His career in the Italian Foreign Services spans experience in the embassies in Nairobi and London, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development in the permanent representation in Brussels, and Embassy of Delhi. So India is not a new place to him. He was here before also, deputy head of mission. One can go on and on about Ambassador Astuto's career. We have posted a detailed bio of all our speakers, distinguished speakers, on our website, indiarights.org. So I now invite His Excellency Ambassador Hugo Astuto, our keynote speaker for the day, to deliver his keynote address. Excellency, in your keynote address, we would like you to address some specific questions. As pointed out earlier, the India-EU summit has been widely seen as an exercise in transformational diplomacy. Can you briefly focus on 2 or 3 transformational outcomes of the summit, which will shape India-EU relations over the next decade? Secondly, Excellency, we are meeting at a time of the festering pandemic in India, which is ruthlessly rampaging across the country. In this interlinked world, no country can afford to be an island. As you recall, Prime Minister Modi sought the support of the EU for the India-South Africa-backed proposal for TRIPS waiver for vaccines. Given the urgency of the situation, can one expect a change in the EU's position the coming weeks? Over to you, Excellency. Floor is yours. Excellency, the floor is yours. He's not able to listen. Ambassador, can you hear me?
Manish, I think he's putting in the chat that he's unable to hear. Neither is Romana able to hear.
Oh my God.
Process, yeah. So your
Can
technical person is
can you hear me?
Yeah,
yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. Well, if you hear me, that's the important thing, I guess.
And what about Excellency? Can you hear me?
I cannot hear you, but let me try. So.
Okay. So did you hear what I asked
maybe
you?
This will be helpful. I will.
Should I repeat it? Should I repeat the questions? Hello.
Can you give me a thumbs up? Should I speak?
Okay, Excellency, my question, couple of questions you may like to address in your keynote speech, that India-EU summit has been widely seen as an exercise in transformational diplomacy. Can you focus on 2 or 3 transformational outcomes which will shape India-EU relations over the next decade? And the second question is on is it possible can we expect realistically the EU to change its stance on the India-South Africa proposal for TRIPS waiver for vaccines?
I'm afraid I couldn't hear your questions, Manish. Sorry about that. Maybe you can use the chat if you wish. Otherwise, I can give you my standard speech on this.
Yeah, you speak, then we will come to you again. Yeah, okay. But this is something I'm asking our guys. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Well, I'm very sorry. Unfortunately, I couldn't hear you. So if you have asked the specific questions, I will not be able to address this. Let me simply share with you a few highlights of the summit as I see it. And let me start by thanking you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here with you and with friends. I think I can make a long story short by starting to say that the meeting has been extremely successful. It has been described as a turning point or an historic meeting, and I think this is a fair assessment. The meeting has been outstanding, both in terms of general atmosphere, and when it comes to the concrete deliverables. To start with, a very strong message of solidarity emerged from the meeting. It has taken place against the backdrop of the COVID crisis. And there was a clear, renewed commitment by all member states to support India in this difficult moment, just like India supported the rest of the world in the past few months by keeping supply chains open, exporting pharmaceutical ingredients and vaccines. As you may know, the European Union has activated the civil protection mechanism at the end of April, and there has been a massive response from all member states. So as we speak, deliveries have taken place of oxygen-related equipment, other critical medical equipment, and antiviral medicines for up to around 100 million euro, which makes this one of the most significant operations undertaken by the EU civil protection mechanism so far. When it comes to the outcomes of the meeting, probably one of the most significant has been the decision to resume negotiations on an ambitious, comprehensive and mutually beneficial free trade agreement, as well as to start negotiations on a standalone investment agreement, and also on an agreement on geographical indications. Well, in parallel, the commitment has been taken to address market access issues and to work together jointly on our broad economic agenda. Working groups have been established to deal with topical issues such as WTO reform, regulatory issues, and the resilience of global supply chains. So, as we all know, the European Union today is already one of the largest trade and investment partners of India. But at the meeting, we have agreed on a broad and comprehensive economic agenda so that we can fully unleash the potential of this economic partnership. And at the same time, we want to work together with India in international fora in order to shape the global agenda, for instance, when it comes to WTO reform, or work together within the G20 framework. At the leaders' meeting, a connectivity partnership that was also established. It's a partnership which has set very clear principles which define connectivity as we want it to be implemented. So, with full transparency, inclusiveness, sustainable connectivity, sustainable in terms of its fiscal parameters, but also environmentally sustainable and socially sustainable. We've also identified specific areas for common endeavors with India on connectivity, including the traditional ones such as transport and energy, but also innovative dimensions such as digital connectivity, and clearly people-to-people connectivity, which in a way underpins the whole of EU-India relationship. The day before the leaders' meeting, the European Investment Bank signed some additional financing contract on sustainable mobility, including for the Pune Metro. And I think that's significant because the European Investment Bank, I'm sure, will prove a very significant tool in the implementation of our connectivity partnership. The EU leaders and the Prime Minister and Prime Minister Modi have also referred to EU-India cooperation on climate change, on the fight against climate change, against biodiversity loss, and for the greening of our economies. This has been described as potentially the most important dimension of our relationship. And I think it's very true in the sense that it reflects a common interest, but also the pursuit of a global common good for the European Union and India. We have resumed our climate dialogue. The first edition of this climate dialogue has taken place just before the leaders' meeting, and we want to work together to make COP26 in Glasgow a success. And the European Union already works with India in the framework, for instance, of the International Solar Alliance or the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. And we want to continue to do so. I think these flagship Indian initiatives are an example of what India can do in fostering a global agenda oriented towards the greening of our economic models. And important outcomes are also to be recorded when it comes to the digital transition. I think the green and digital transition are priorities which are shared by both India and the European Union. We want to cooperate, for instance, on high performance computing. And specifically, we have identified the issue of research when it comes to COVID and extreme weather events. And we also want to work together on artificial intelligence and to hold a high-level digital forum. This will all contribute to the strengthening of our cooperation on the digital transition. There are also other dimensions, such as the rollout of 5G networks, or the issue of data protection, where the EU and India can work together, particularly since we are both democracies and open societies. So in a way, we are facing the same challenges. And I think this emerged very clearly when our executive vice president for the digital transition, Mrs. Verstager, participated in the Resina dialogue and had a number of meetings inside of Resina. So what we have seen is a convergence of interests also when it comes to the digital transition. On foreign and security policy, let me recall the new focus on the Indo-Pacific following the EU Council conclusion recently adopted and the drafting of our EU strategy on the Indo-Pacific. You can see that also in the framework of our connectivity partnership with India, but also on the broad economic bilateral agenda and our drive to strengthen cooperation on foreign and security policies. Basically, the European Union is a major stakeholder in the Indo-Pacific, and we want to contribute to its prosperity and stability. And we feel that we share the same principles. We believe in a rules-based system of international governance. So we share the same principles with India, and we want to work with India in order to foster a cooperative approach to international relations in the region, including when it comes to maritime security and respect for international law. To be noted also the joint statement on Afghanistan, which was released by the foreign minister, by Dr. Jaishankar and the High Representative, Josep Borrell, a few days before the leaders' meeting. I think that's an example of strengthened cooperation on foreign and security issues, which we can follow up also on different topics and dimensions based on our shared values and converging interests. So let me conclude here by again reiterating it was an excellent meeting, a very positive atmosphere, also with a number of very symbolic gestures, including let me recall, the Prime Minister of Portugal holding his Overseas Citizens of India card. And let me also recall here what the Prime Minister Modi said, that the European Union and India can together be a force multiplier for global good in the 21st century. I think that's a very apt definition indeed. And with your permission, I will close here.
Thank you, Excellency, for that overarching view of the summit and the landmark outcomes it has produced. Are you able to listen to me now? You can.
Yes, now I do. Yes,
because
now loud and clear.
I think probably you reduce the volume. Okay, Excellency, the question which I was going to ask you, and if you could answer briefly, in India, there is a lot of interest in, as you know, we are going through a very deadly second wave of the pandemic, and other parts of the world are also suffering. The global equitable access to vaccines has become an all-important issue. I mean, can we expect the EU to change its stance on India-South Africa proposal for TRIPS exemption on IPR? I mean, what is the way forward on this issue, important issue? Over to you.
Look, I think we are ready to discuss. I think it's an important conversation we must have, including as the WTO. We share the same initial proposition, let's say, with India, which is that we need to address this crisis with an attitude grounded in solidarity, in global solidarity. And I think both the European Union and India have demonstrated that with concrete deeds. India has been exporting vaccines in the neighboring and beyond, and so has the European Union. We have actually exported almost as many vaccines as we use domestically, around 200 million doses. And as you probably know, the European Union has also been leading the COVAX initiative, which aims at delivering vaccines all around the world where they are needed, irrespective of where one lives. We have been a driving force behind the creation of COVAX, and we are one of the leading contributors. So we are all in this together. We want vaccinations to be readily available at an affordable price worldwide. So we work based on this assumption, and we intend to continue to do so. The priority right now, we believe, is ramping up the manufacturing capacity. We need to increase the capacity worldwide to produce, to manufacture vaccines. That's where our focus is.
Thank you. Thank you, Excellency. We'll come back to you with more questions. Now I turn to Portuguese Ambassador to India, His Excellency Carlos Pereira Marques. Excellency, my question to you is, let me briefly introduce. I mean, Ambassador Marques is a veteran diplomat. He's served in different capitals, different countries, including Switzerland, Zambia. He's also served as diplomatic advisor to President of the Republic, Consul General in Johannesburg, and ambassador in Luxembourg. He has been ambassador of Portugal in India for almost now close to 2.5 years, if I'm not wrong. I mean, he has seen quite a bit of India now. So, Excellency, I turn to you with a couple of questions, which is this: that organizing the first India-EU summit in 27+1 format is really the high point of the Portuguese presidency of the EU. It's something to be proud of. We know that the Portuguese presidency played a proactive and pivotal role in nudging the EU leadership to restart FTA negotiations. Is that a correct perception? Also, in what ways Portugal shaped the success of key outcomes of the May 8th summit? And just a follow-up question to that, which is that there are still some weeks to go for the Portuguese presidency. What concrete action can one expect in terms of implementation of the ambitious agenda laid out in the summit? And Excellency, on a lighter note, how much do you think Prime Minister Costa's Indian origin influence Portugal presidency's attitude towards India and elevating India-EU relations? Over to you, sir.
Yes. Do you hear me? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Manish. Let me first of all to congratulate you for the wonderful title you chose for this session. It's very inspiring, and it's a pleasure being here with you and with such a good company. Well, first of all, as you so well said, we are of course very happy and very proud with the results of the Porto meeting. Well, let me say that very early we set India as one of the main priorities of the Portuguese EU presidency. And why? Because we found that the weight of of India in Asia and the Indo-Pacific wasn't proportional to its weight in the EU external agenda. We definitely needed to have more India in Europe. And so why do you believe this? Because our belief is that in a multipolar world as the one we live today, we need to have balanced and diversified relations. And so definitely we have to have more India in Europe. And so that's why very early in the, if I recall well, in December 2019, we had the idea of organizing this first ever EU-India leaders meeting. So it's a non-institutional summit. The novelty being that the Prime Minister of India, for the first time ever, could meet directly all his EU counterparts, heads of state and government, and not only the President of the EU Commission and the EU Council as usually at the regular summits. So we launched this idea in the end of 2019. It was very well received both by India and the EU. Meanwhile, the circumstances changed a lot. It was the beginning of the pandemic, but I think the evolution proved also how right we were, because this last year and a half just prove how vulnerable and how interdependent we are, and we really need to strengthen our relationships, especially with those who share the same principles as us: the democracy, the rule of law, the respect of human rights. And so that's why we gave such a priority to India. So the idea of this EU leaders meeting was accepted. Then I also want to emphasize the meeting actually occurred at the peak of the second wave of the pandemic in India, and still it wasn't postponed, it wasn't cancelled. It could have been, but there was such a strong political will to go ahead with this idea, and it was such an important memento that we decided to move forward, and of course India has a decisive word, and we are very grateful because they really wanted to have this meeting during the Portuguese presidency. But then, of course, having this first historic EU leaders meeting was important, but we wanted to be more than a simple photo opportunity. To be very nice, but I mean, of course, better to have very concrete results and important deliverables. And of course, the economic area was a crucial one. As Hugo already referred, the EU is the most important trade partner of India. The trade increased 72%, more than 72% in the last decade. The EU is also one of the most important foreign investor in India, and the investments in India more than doubled the last decade. So there was a huge potential, and as we all know, these very important trade negotiations were blocked for more than 8 years. So there was a great effort from both sides, and of course we also, as presidency, we tried to help as much as possible. An important factor, of course, it was the summit of July. The EU summit of last July. As you know, the roadmap 2025 was approved, and some new bodies were approved, and one of them was the high-level dialogue on trade and investment. And the work of this new body was crucial for these preparatory negotiations. Because now we didn't have negotiations just on a technical level, but also as a political level, because this high-level dialogue is presided on the India side by Minister Goyal, and on the EU side by the DG Trade, Valdis Dombrovski. So it had a political element that was definitely very important. And there was at least 2 meetings of this high-level dialogue on trade and investment before the Porto meeting. So technical negotiations, this now a new element, the political level, but there was also a very strong political will from both sides. It was clear. What did we do as presidency? We tried to help as much as possible. There was also, of course, some diplomatic work behind the scenes. Our foreign minister, who was very keen since the beginning on our relationship with India, had several meetings with Minister Jai Shankar. He had a meeting with Minister Goyal. He had a meeting also with the Minister Sitaraman. Our Secretary of State for Internationalization came here on April. He had meetings with the Secretary of State for Finance, with Minister Puri. I met myself, Minister Goyal. Minister Goyal himself, he also wanted to meet all the EU heads of missions to explain on all clarity the Indian position. And so our role was trying to establish a bridge. Also, sometimes it's very important to clarify the positions, So we try to understand better the Indian position, to understand better the EU and the EU Commission position. And finally, thanks to a very strong political will from both sides, as I said, we could reach these very positive results, and we are very happy with these results, not only concerning the trade, but also in investment and geographical indications. Now, the way forward. You told that we still have 1 month ahead. The leitmotif of the Portuguese presidency is a time to deliver for a digital, green and social transition, and we firmly believe it's important to deliver. Of course, our priority will be the FTA and investment negotiations. They are very important. As you know, the board in charge to follow up and to take care of these negotiations is the high-level dialogue on trade and investment. Both parts want to have results at the earliest possible date. Of course, we know that are very difficult and demanding and complex negotiations, but that is definitely a priority, and we work on that. And India will remain crucial for the EU. It will be still a priority for the Slovenian presidency. Next September, we will have this EU strategy on the Indo-Pacific, which is very important. So I'm very enthusiastic about the perspective we have had. Your last question concerning our Prime Minister, and he really considers himself, of course, a Portuguese citizen, but also a representative of the India diaspora abroad, and that's why he displayed so proudly both his OCI card and his Portuguese passport at the summit. I think of course it helps, and we have between India and Portugal, we have we meet for more than 500 years, so we have a very important element of trust between us. That's very important. And of course, there's this personal relation of our Prime Minister with India also helps. I cannot deny it, of course.
Right. Excellency, thanks so much for that inside view. of the role of the Portuguese presidency in the summit and in the larger relationship. I now turn to Sandeep Chakravarti, dear friend and the suave and the dynamic diplomat who worked day and night for the success of this summit. Now, Sandeep tells me that, he's been invited to so many of these events that, EU also crops up in his sleep, start chattering about EU in the course of his sleep. He dreams about EU and all that. So, Sandeep, my question to you is that since you had a privileged seat in these negotiations and you played an important role in shaping the joint statement and other important outcomes, give us an inside view of what happened. Especially we would like to know that what are those areas where you deployed your fabled charm to pull it off, where you got the EU to concede to issues of Indian interest. And on a more serious note, you may likely have written also and spoken about Indo-Pacific Convergence between India and the EU. How do you look at the convergence we see reflected in the joint statement? Over to you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Manish. I hope you can hear me. Wonderful to be on this panel with many friends and with ambassadors Ugo and Ambassador Vincenzo and Ambassador Freddy and Carlos, and of course Romana has joined us from Brussels. I hope, Romana, you can hear us now. And so I would start by saying that it's very easy and wonderful to negotiate and with friends, and I think we were involved in negotiations on the connectivity partnership with Romana in Brussels, and we never felt that was. Although both sides were very conscious about their positions and their interests, but there was always this friendliness and this whole. I think the sentiment that what we are doing is for common good, and I think I would just recollect what Ugo said, that what Prime Minister said in the meeting, that India and EU are force multipliers for common good. I think that sentiment is there, and it's very pervasive, and it was very evident in the room which we joined in virtually, and we saw the sentiment coming across very, very positively, very strongly, and 19 EU leaders spoke. And it is a rare moment in history where 30 leaders were in one room, and they were most basically speaking from the same notes. I would say there was hardly any discordant note. In fact, there was none, and everybody expressed support and solidarity for the difficult time that India was going through. But they said that they believe that the solution to the problems the world faces is also by increasing India-EU partnership and cooperation, and it was manifest in the joint statement, and it is manifest in the connectivity partnership, in which Romana had a big role to play. I echo and reiterate everything that Ambassadors Ugo and Carlos have mentioned, and I would also like to highlight the special role which Portugal played. Behind the scenes, which Carlos was mentioning, I would share a few details about the behind the scenes activity. In the peak of the pandemic, Portugal sent its Minister of State for Trade and Commerce to India for discussions with MOS Mr. Hardeep Puri, and I thought it had a role. And then the conversations which Minister Silva Santos had with the ministers in government of India, and the telephone conversation of Prime Minister and our Prime Minister, and the general diplomatic effort. Every capital, every leader that we spoke to voiced support for the India-EU relationship. And I think the outcomes were there for all of us to see. So I am very optimistic about the outcomes and follow-up that will happen. You see, the EU relationship is special in the sense that we have relationships, extraordinary relationships with member states. So and some member states are represented here: Italy and Denmark and Portugal. Extraordinary relationship with the member state. And then we also have a relationship with EU. EU has what should I say? Domain on certain issues, for instance, trade or on climate change or on the normative aspects of the relationship. And in trade and investment, we were not moving forward. And we saw in this meeting of the EU with the EU leaders a unique opportunity to push through a resumption of the trade negotiations. And I think there was reciprocation. And there was a lot of support from everywhere, and we achieved that. Now I think the challenge would be to keep up with the momentum, to start the negotiations, to do the pre-FTA discussions, to make the scoping papers, to share our views, and then quickly embark on negotiations and reach conclusion. Because if we do not successfully do it, then I think we would be belying the faith that the leaders have reposed on us. In fact, Prime Minister said in the meeting that we should not let it just to the bureaucrats or the negotiators to reach a conclusion of the FTA. The politicians, the political leadership also have to lean on them and ensure that it is guided. We are lucky that we have this high-level mechanism, the high-level dialogue led by Vice President Dombrovskis and our Commerce and Industry Minister, which will monitor the progress. So I am very optimistic, and although it's not easy to, from the Indian perspective, to negotiate with the EU and FTA because they are masters in FTA negotiations, and they also have to carry the concerns and the stakes of all 27 member states. So that becomes a challenge, and I understand and appreciate that. But we would also like to move on with that. And I think political will within India. We want a stronger economic relationship with Europe, and that's going to happen. I was just remarking in the previous event that I was attending that somehow maybe in India we on a regular basis do not realize the importance of Europe for India. But if you see over the last 8-10 months, the virtual summits that we have held, most of them have been with Europe. The 15th EU summit in July. Then we had a summit with Luxembourg, with Italy, with Denmark, with Sweden, with Netherlands, and now the EU leaders meeting. So large number of meetings have taken place. So that proves that there is substance and depth in the relationship, and putting our money where the are there. So I think, and it is being reciprocated, and I would strongly urge you to watch this space, and you will find a lot of follow-up. Already, as we are talking, Hugo sent me a mail. He wants a meeting tomorrow itself with me on a follow-up of some of the discussions that were held in the summit. So there you are. Despite the pandemic, I think we are following up, and more will happen as far as India-EU relations are concerned. But again, I'll just get back to the room on that day. Hugo was there. He was also with us, and I think amazing sentiments in the room. Every leader spoke very, very warmly towards India, and of course you mentioned about Prime Minister Costa, but I saw him visibly very emotional, because I think he took it upon himself when he came here in 2019 after he met with Prime Minister Modi, that he will take the responsibility of putting momentum and strength back into the relationship, and he did it. So full credit to the Portugal presidency and to the EU leaders. President Michel wrote a very, very endearing letter to Prime Minister of invitation to Prime Minister when he invited him for the summit. And just before the summit, President Ursula von der Leyen had a telephonic conversation with the Prime Minister, and also the support we have got from the European Union. It's only between friends that such a thing can happen. Immediately the European Union activated their mechanism, which is known as the ECO, and large amount of aid or assistance has flown in. It is coming in every day, and it has been very helpful and in meeting the challenge that India is facing in COVID. Over to you, Manish.
Thank you, Sandeep. For that very enlightening and illuminating inside view. I now turn to Ambassador Romana Vlahotin. She joining from some stunningly beautiful island, and the fact that she could find time to join from there also underscores the theme of digital connectivity. So she's ambassador. Just to introduce her briefly, she is a special coordinator and ambassador at large for connectivity in the European External Action Service. Career diplomat. Before joining the Croatian Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1999, she worked as an analyst at the UN Commission for former Yugoslavia, the UN Tribunal in The Hague, and the Council on Foreign Relations in Washington. She is also a member of the European Council on Foreign Relations, as I said. Her detailed resume is again available on our website. I now come to Her Excellency Ambassador on Connectivity. Madam, you have been associated, you were directly involved with shaping one of the most important outcomes of this May 18 summit, which was a joint document, India-EU Connectivity Partnership. Now, the question I wish to ask you is that, the way it has been packaged, the partnership, the idiom and vocabulary in which it has been articulated, suggests there is a conscious design to present and position the India-EU Connectivity Partnership as an alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative. Is it a conscious branding exercise? Are we looking consciously to distinguish itself from the way China has been doing these connectivity projects? Also, on the practical side, going forward, what kind of joint connectivity projects? We talk about the document talks about physical connectivity, digital connectivity, people to people. What specific projects can one expect in the near future? Have the two sides held preliminary discussions on some of these connectivity projects? Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I hope you hear me.
Yes.
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 Many regards from an island off the southern Croatian coast. Very happy to said it was clear these were negotiations between friends, as Sandeep already said, and there was more of fine-tuning than tough negotiations in the time that spent working on the text. First was understanding about the value. The second was the understanding about massive opportunities. And the third was I would not say this was in any way deliberately done as an alternative to party peace about cannot be emphasized enough. We have, from the very first minutes, the environmental, fiscal, and economic sustainability, and then for level playing field, of course, because connectivity is an extremely expensive and extremely useful environment for private investments. It is not by chance that the two most mentioned outcomes of the summit were the resumed trade talks and connectivity partnership together with us on investments on connectivity, and the needs are massive. The World Bank estimates that globally, annually, there is a need between 1.83 trillion euros, which is the kind of money that you can get only if you really crowd in private capital at a very large scale. The second agreement we had was that this is a massive opportunity. European Union and India, it's 1.8 billion people living in democracies in a data economy. When you put these together, this really is, I would say, first and foremost, a massive investment opportunity, not only into new technologies, but also in people. The green and digital transition that is before us requests a different type of thinking and investing in connectivity. And I'm very happy to say that besides the traditional, and they were already mentioned, transports and energy, also digital, we have quite a large part of the document dedicated to human connectivity and investment in research and innovation. And then the third element we agreed on from the very beginning, this is partnership for the future. This is not just a bilateral partnership. It's not just between EU and India. We really want to work together to create new values. And for me, it is really important that there are different vectors present in the document. We're talking about connectivity west-east, but we're also talking about north and south. We're mentioning Africa, we're mentioning Central Asia, we're mentioning Indo-Pacific, we're mentioning Indian neighborhood. And I hope at one point we'll be able to mention European neighborhood as well, because these are all spaces, territories, countries, and communities where India and European Union can create new values. There are other interested partners as well. You know that European Union already has a partnership with Japan. So we will want to see if there is possible to something to be done in that trilateral. In general, connectivity is about partnering, and I'm very much looking forward to see how this will develop further in terms of our approach to regional connectivity. Yet, two words of caution. I think it's very important for all of us to understand this is not the sprint, this is a marathon. This is a very long-term investment and involvement. And it really is both about regulatory environments, but very concrete projects as well. This was one of your questions. What are the concrete projects? First, let me say that European Union has already been investing massively on connectivity in India. We have made just a preliminary list of some of the projects that have already been implemented. We didn't call it connectivity, but it is connectivity. And we are looking forward to sitting down with our colleagues from Delhi and looking at the elements that are needed to sort of have a a real plan on how to support investments in connectivity. Primarily, I would want to be able to look at the financing side. Financing of connectivity is of essence. We have a number of ideas. We have put a lot of these elements into documents, and we will be following up immediately. Right, back to you, Manish.
Yeah. Thanks, Romana, for that overarching view on where the connectivity projects, what can we expect on the connectivity front in the near future. I now turn to Italian ambassador to India, His Excellency Ambassador Vincenzo Di Luca. Excellency, briefly talking of Italy, what are the big takeaway for Italy from this summit? And also Italy holds the presidency of the G20 and will co-host COP26 later this year. Several EU countries are also members of G20. In what way the India-EU summit outcomes will complement the agenda of G20 and COP26? Over to you, Excellency.
Thank you, Manish. Well, welcome to all my colleagues and Ambassador Romana from Brussels. I think there is a coincidence between the EU-India agenda and G20 and COP26 agenda. We will chair G20, we'll co-chair COP26 this year. G20 agenda have three pillars: people, planet, prosperity. Of course, when talk about people, we talk about also the present dramatic health challenges coming from the pandemics. And G20 will be focused on how to tackle this crisis all over the world. We will host next Friday an important summit, a global health summit, precisely discussing and trying to make proposals for a further international cooperation on health and pandemics. Second is planet. Planet is major challenges, climate change and the process towards Glasgow. And also in this field, there is a sort of interaction between the discussion we have in G20 and the debate in EU-India summit. Third pillar is prosperity. Prosperity means an inclusive economic recovery all over the world. Now, coming to the challenge we discussed and also the outcomes of the EU-India summit, the leader summit, I think there are now potentials for really make progress in the main area of the partnership between India and Europe, that are trade, investment, and also the area of energy transition and digital transition. In these fields, I would like to mention some potential of this partnership. Europe is one of the most interconnected energy markets. We have an experience, a special experience in interconnection. And you know that interconnection in energy market is really one of the key to ensure energy efficiency and also to integrate renewable energy in electricity grid. So in this field, I think we can share experience in terms of technology, in terms of regulation, in terms of investment. I can tell you that Italy has 26 interconnection with European Union neighbor countries. And in India and in the region, when we talk about connectivity also, energy interconnection is vital to really integrate regions and integrate even the internal Indian market. Without interconnection, you cannot really tackle the challenge of energy efficiency and energy transition. The same is for digital transition. In Italy, we experienced the program of Industry 4.0, that is the interaction between digital service and manufacturing. The same here in India. So I think there is really a potential to go on in the framework established in Oporto. I would also say that this summit, compared with the previous exercises, because the special partnership between the European Union and India started in the year 2000, but now I think we have a political momentum, that's for sure, a political momentum to further really enhance this special and strategic partnership. I would also say that in this very moment, we have a convergence between the member states partnership with India and the European Union partnership with India. We adopted as Italy with India a plan of action for 5 years, precisely the same time frame of the partnership between European Union and India, in the same area of priorities, the same kind of direction in green economy, in energy transition, in food processing, in machinery, advanced technology. So I think this is really a momentum, both at political level, but also in the awareness of business community. Maybe we have to work more on this to support the political process, next negotiation, also with the involvement of the business community in Europe and in India, because at the end of the day, we can offer the condition for investment and trade, but our companies who decide to invest and to promote trade. So I think this process started in Oporto needs to be further support, but more awareness by the business community, civil society, as well as a dialogue between the parliaments, the European Parliament and the Indian Parliament, the Member State Parliament and the Indian Parliament. I think this is a process that should be inclusive of all the actors, and Oporto really has been a starting point, a very important new starting point in the strategic partnership between the European Union and India. And also in this summit in Oporto, we have seen how many synergies we can have between the summit and the G20 agenda, as I told you in my first remarks. So I think we have a lot of work to do here in India, in Europe. We have potential for even identify specific projects on energy transition, advanced manufacturing, on trade and investment, on technology, on research, on COVID and health policies and practices. We have done a lot in this last year. Italy in India in the last 12 months has promoted 12 new investment projects in the year of pandemics, in the year of COVID. That means there is a growing attention also of the private sector in investing more in India, from Europe to India, but also from India to Europe. And also people-to-people relation. We do not forget this point. This is very important. People-to-people connection, people-to-people relationship. We have increased the number of visa and the number of students from India to Italy, the same many other European Union countries. I think the process has to be really an inclusive process in this special relationship between the European Union and India. Thank you so much, Manish.
Thank you, Excellency, for that very optimistic view on the road ahead. Now I turn to Denmark's ambassador to India, His Excellency Freddy Swan. Excellency, I had the privilege of interviewing him some time back, and I was struck by his optimism and conviction in India's rise and destiny. What I want to ask you today is this: has the second wave of the pandemic in India impacted your optimism about India's future? What more can the EU and India and Denmark do by way of combating the pandemic in the coming weeks and months? Also, coming to the second part, which is on the climate change agenda, which emerged out of the India-EU summit. Given Denmark's expertise in green and renewable energies and technologies, what role can Denmark play in advancing green partnership between India and the EU? Over to you, Excellency.
Thank you very much, Manish. good to see all the colleagues being around from Delhi and from MEA and also from Dubrovnik. It's a great honor to be invited for this. Let me start by saying diplomacy is about being optimistic. You can't do anything if you are pessimistic and you give up. So I'm still confident that whatever happens in India has happened, that India will have the resources and the strength to overcome this huge challenge that we have seen. Luckily, the numbers COVID-wise are going down. We all know that India has the scale when it comes to the opportunities and of course also the challenges. So keep that in mind. But let me start by praising both the EU as well as the Portuguese presidency for having really managed to deliver a milestone that would put the Indo-European relationship into a new era and take it to a new level. There's a total alignment of priorities as well as of values that will secure that whatever we are undertaking, and of course trade is important, investment is important, connectivity stands out, Indo-Pacific, but also climate change. The more aligned we are, the better we will be positioned to deal with all these issues. And I'm pretty sure that India, given the transition happening, that India will really develop a common agenda with the European Union when it comes to a lot of these issues. But let me speak on the climate change. Denmark and India, we agreed on the so-called Green Strategic Partnership back in September last year. And that's setting out kind of overall framework where we are trying to really to look into how we can bring our skills that the Indian Prime Minister alluded to many times, the Danish solutions that will really fit with the scale of India. And on top of that, we have the speed and the scope. Let me explain the speed. We all know that we have to fight the climate changes. We know it's urgent. We know there are a lot of milestones coming up. We know there are a lot of commitments. Have we met them? Yes or no? Back in 2009, we had the famous COP15 in Denmark. At that time, the developed countries promised to transfer $100 billion per year to the developing countries. It has not happened. So it's a big issue that we have to deliver on. Secondly, we have the transfer of technology. In order really to cope with climate changes, we need to have a transfer of the best technologies available. Why? Because India is in a phase where India has to develop, and the EU-India summit is setting out the right framework for this continued high-level dialogue on climate change and energy. So in that context, I think we have reached a very important milestone. Not that the summit per se delivered any spectacular results on the climate change, but given the overall context where we are fully aligned as to priorities, basic principles, I think we have an even better platform really to deliver. Also in view of what was highlighted in the statement, namely that the process or transition towards low carbon future has to be just and equitable. And there we have, from the EU side, seen from my point of view and Denmark's point of view, we have to bring in the skills, the solutions that India will need in her transition to a far better and more sustainable and greener society. And if you look into the statement, the headline reads, protecting our planet and fostering green growth. Our experience is that green growth is not just about political statements. It's also a better way to create new and permanent jobs. So in that context, I think the summit in that context also delivered. And I sincerely hope that we will see a lot of progress in the coming years. So in that context, EU and India are the natural partners. And I do hope with the good officers and the good efforts of India, G7, G20, and so forth, that we will be able to deliver on the COP26, which is an important milestone where we have really to commit ourselves to the goals that were set out by the Paris Agreement.
All right. Thanks, Excellency. Green is the way to go. Green is the color of the future and also the India-EU relations. We have a few questions from the audience now. I will read out some of that. This question is from Sunaina Malhotra. She is a research scholar. This is posed to EU's ambassador to India, Excellency Ugo Astuto. She asked that, the EU-India partnership focused a great deal on people-to-people connectivity. What are the concrete plans in this regard? Because, and she also talks about the current development that, several EU countries have barred flights from India. When is the situation going to ease? And, won't that come in the way of people-to-people connectivity? Over to you, sir. Can you hear me?
Well, thank you. Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Well, people-to-people connectivity is something which underpins, I guess, the whole relationship between the EU and India. Actually, it's remarkable how close the EU and India are. Carlos made a reference to that, about 500 years of relationship between Portugal and India. So did Enzo, but I think that's true for the whole continent. And it's entirely reciprocal. It's a dimension we try to foster in all its multiple facets. We try to promote exchanges in culture. We try to promote exchanges in research and innovation. I think it's a brand name in India to Erasmus Plus in its projection even beyond Europe. We've got thousands of students coming from India to Europe and vice versa. I think that's the epitome of what we want to achieve in terms of of an horizontal exchange of experiences. As to the practicalities you were referring to, well, I'm afraid we are all bound, but we are all subject to regulations and obstacles to movement, which are dependent on the current health situation. We can only hope we will manage together to overcome this. In the meantime, we should make the most of the digital tools we have at our disposal. I guess this roundtable today is a good example. It's a good example of what you can achieve and also the obstacles you are facing, because I couldn't hear quite a number of interventions by colleagues, but still, let's make the most of what we have. But thank you for raising the issue of people-to-people contacts, because irrespective of what governments do, it's a fact that the relationship, the partnership between the EU and India is something that comes from the bottom up. It's a demand, it's a request we hear from our citizens. Over.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. Next question is from Mr. Sriram, he's a journalist. He asked, what are the concrete steps which can be taken to strengthen cooperation between India and EU in post-COVID pandemic economic recovery? May I invite Ambassador Luca and Ambassador Freddie Swan to answer this.
Yes, thank you, Manish. On economic recovery, I already mentioned some of the area where we can further develop our relationship and also further increase the volume of investment. As I said, last year we had an increase of also European Union investment here in India. And of course, there is the question of sharing technology and experience in all the priority sectors of the sustainable development in India and in Europe. We have similarities between the recovery plan and the next generation EU and also the plans and programs of the Indian government. I think on this, we should also try to increase research programs in the economic sector able to help the transition, both digital and energy transition here in India. On pandemics and COVID also, we have already started an exchange of practices between Italy and India, because you know Italy was the first country affected in Europe of COVID last year, and we had a very interesting webinar and workshop between our two ministries of health on genomics, on other important research, also on medical treatment, and also on practices for hospitalization and other similarities. I think also on there we can share further experience between European Union and India, and certainly we should play an important role in the multilateral organization together, European Union and India, to have a more effective multilateralism in tackling the health challenges, not only pandemics but also further disease that affect all over the world. And also on vaccination, we share the commitment to have access to vaccination, as rightly Hugo said in the first remark, and on that we will discuss this on the next Global Health Summit in Rome, digital mode, but will be also an opportunity to gather all the international commitments, because we need a global effort. There is a global challenge, we need a global response. Thank you.
Over to Ambassador of Denmark. Sir, would you like to add something?
No, I think Vincenzo answered properly, and also covering all the aspects. But there's one answer which I think is just obvious. That is all the commitments made by India and the European Union at the summit. Let's get it done. The earlier, the better. That's the best and proper answer to all the challenges that you mentioned. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. The next question is on the Palestine and what is happening right now in Gaza. This question is by journalist Suresh Panjay. He asked about Indian government has endorsed support to the Palestinian cause. What is the EU's position on that? What is happening in the Gaza? What can the EU do? How can India and EU align their position, if at all? Excellency EU's ambassador, would you like to take up this? Ambassador Astuto?
Thank you. Well, I'm probably not the best placed person to comment on the situation in the Middle East, since I'm posted in India now for almost 2 years. But let me simply say that there has been a statement recently issued by the High Representative Borrell, so I'd like to direct the journalist to that statement. Basically, we condemn violence, and we ask for dialogue, which is the only way forward. Thank you.
Right. Next question is from Simran Walia. She's a research assistant with India Rights Network. She asked, this is addressed to Sandeep, how can India and EU cooperate further in the Indo-Pacific region, keeping in mind China's growing assertiveness? Over to you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Manish. What I want to say on this is that irrespective of other powers, what India views is that a multipolar Asia is, we welcome a multipolar world, and we believe that EU is one of the major poles in the world, and so is India. And a multipolar Asia is needed or important for a multipolar world. So we welcome engagement with the EU as a whole and member states in the Indo-Pacific. We are waiting. We have seen the conclusions of the Council. We believe that in September the strategy will come out. Meanwhile, some European countries have come out with the strategies. We welcome those strategies. In fact, we have been working with some member states in some way already. For instance, in the recent bilateral meeting between France and India on the sidelines of the Raisina dialogue, France agreed to join one of the 7 pillars of the Indian Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative of India on the marine ecology side. So we are engaging with Europe and European countries on the Indo-Pacific, and we also have a trilateral dialogue with France and Australia, where again a lot of activities are focused in the Indo-Pacific on maritime security, on global marine commons and marine ecology, etc., and HADR. So we are waiting to see the European strategy, and of course we will engage with the European powers in the Indo-Pacific. There are lots that is happening, and but a lot more can happen. But I would not like to say that it is directed against anybody. Our policy, as you know, is inclusive. We welcome others to join in that, and we also believe in Asian centrality as far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned. So we want to work with ASEAN and other countries in the Indo-Pacific region.
The next question is to EU Ambassador. Thanks, Sandeep. The next question is to EU Ambassador. This is from Ranjit Kumar, senior journalist. He asked, EU and India are already cooperating in anti-piracy activities in the Indian Ocean. Since EU and India have decided to deepen security cooperation, how will it work on the ground? Excellency, if you can provide some insight.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, that's one of the dimensions we want to explore as a follow-up, also follow-up to the leaders' meeting. Even before the leaders' meeting in January, for instance, we had the first maritime dialogue between the European Union and India. As the journalist correctly says, we already have some experience of cooperation between the Indian Navy and the EU anti-piracy operation Atalanta off the coast of Somalia. Well, we want to build on it. And we want to explore further avenues for cooperation also when it comes to security, based on our convergence, on the same principles, whereby security is grounded in respect for international law.
All right, thanks. The next question is from Habibullah Sarkar. He's a student in Marwada University. He's asking again about people-to-people part of the relationship. And he's asking, in this pandemic, it's too difficult to get international scholarship and EU visa for international students. What is the way out? Any steps have been taken? Excellency, would you like to answer? These are all EU-centric questions, or any of the ambassadors would like to answer this, that what is being done to, ease visa issue for students?
Well, what I can say again, we are in the midst of an unprecedented situation, which has created havoc in all dimensions of life. This also includes the movement of people and visas. So we remain committed to a healthy exchange of students and professionals between Europe and India. But this is subject, obviously, to the contingencies of the health situation on both sides, actually. So we can only hope that with the passing of time, with the rollout of vaccinations, we will be able together to find a way out of the present predicament.
All right, thanks. The next question is from Nivedita Mukherjee. Again, she's a journalist. And, she's asking about when are of course, the very big ticket outcome of the summit was this decision to resume FTA negotiations. What could be a possible timeline? When is going to resume? Because we have had quite a bad experience. 8 years it was stuck. And I believe that, there is a suspicion that to make the summit successful, the two sides decided to announce it. But are we ever going to get there? What is the way ahead? Briefly, we're coming to the close of the webinar. Who would like to take a shot? Portuguese ambassador? Because you guys seem to be doing some heavy lifting for India, especially.
Yes. Well, we have no time lines. As I said before, all of us, we hope to have results as soon as possible, at the earliest possible date. We try to restart the negotiations as soon as possible, but as I said before, these are very demanding and complex and difficult negotiations. So we have to work on it because we have a common interest. So we have to work on it, and hopefully we have results as soon as possible. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. The next question is to Ambassador Romana Blahuti. This is from Sneha Chakravarti. She's a research scholar. She's asking about how will the India-EU connectivity partnership link up with similar initiatives like Africa-Asia Growth Corridor, in which Japan and India are partnering. And, she's also voicing her skepticism, like about all these grand infrastructure connectivity projects. Like India, Japan have been talking on this Africa-Asia Growth Corridor. Nothing much has emerged out of it. Are we looking at some sort of tentative dateline? And what's the way forward? How to integrate these two? I mean, that is the question. Africa,
Thanks
Asia Growth Corridor.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think I already said this is a long-term discussion. This is a marathon, and the needs are massive. And the way we respond needs to really be in a way that we at all times maintain sustainability of the project. So this is for us the most important part, that all the investments that we make actually make sense and bring benefit to the communities where the investments are done. I have already mentioned that we do have a partnership with Japan. I know that the issue of connectivity is going to be discussed at the G7 summit. It, of course, is discussed at the G20 as well. So there is a lot of sort of connecting the dots and different ideas and different plans on how to really tackle this. You know that the US came with this idea of blue dot network and etc. So I think what is truly important here is that all of us find the best possible and most straightforward way of partnering with private investors and private capital. Because again, the scale is such that public financing cannot afford to do much. So we have to find the best formula of really crowding in private capital. And there are elements in our partnership. If you look carefully at the last part of EU-India connectivity partnership, you will see that we are sort of listing a number of ways where we think, and instruments where we think that convergence of those can bring us to the point where much more interest will be shown by the private investors. When we talk about connectivity, we talk about massive economic opportunities, but we also talk about responsibilities that we have when investing in large-scale infrastructure, so that countries don't end up in a debt that they cannot repay, so that these projects really bring the benefits to the societies where they are built. So in a way, I see this just as a beginning of a long-term, careful partnership on large-scale infrastructure. I said we are already doing quite a lot in the last decade. European Investment Bank has invested around 3.5 billion on connectivity inside India. I mean, a lot of metro projects were actually built by loans from the EIB and support from European investors. Also, there has been around 10 billion in the last decade from different member states, all in one way or another on connectivity projects. We are now looking at this in a more focused way. I think that investment in digital infrastructure and in general investment in digital is going to be the next big thing. I mean, India is extremely young. I think half of population average age is below 25. So it's really a massive opportunity there. And we need to look at this with a bit of patience and very good planning in terms of how we prepare for what I think is the next generation of infrastructure that is needed.
Right. Thanks so much for that perspective. The last couple of questions. This question is from Yash Acharya. He's asking about, he feels that smaller countries in the European Union have probably some greater connect with India. But his question probably is this, that in this broader rubric of India-EU partnership, probably the focus has been on bigger European countries. How to advance relationship with smaller countries. And also I got another question, which is on the India Nordic Summit, which is expected to be held in June, if I'm not wrong. Both the questions, if the ambassador to Denmark answer, that would be great. That how the India Nordic Summit will also complement this the larger India-EU partnership. Over to you, Excellency.
Thank you very much indeed. It's no secret that Prime Minister Modi is not traveling in June, so therefore the Indo-Nordic Summit has been postponed. There was discussion about having a virtual one, but we agreed that we should opt for a physical one. So we are looking into the time span for that. As to the first question, I mean, I represent a small but smart country. We are only 6 million people, and we have seen our ups and downs. And but if you find the right recipe, of course, then you will be relevant for a big country like India. And it's not about the size that is important. That is what you bring to the table. And of course, the bigger EU member states, they will have kind of logic and natural platform to interact because they bring a lot of different things to the table. But we had this Green Strategic Partnership, where it was carefully drafted and carefully orchestrated to secure that what we are good at, the greening skills and so forth, would match really the Indian, let's say, priorities. And our hope is really that if you have these skills, whether you're a small, big, medium-sized country, then of course part of the international cooperation. But don't make any mistake. Of course, we have our bilateral, but the overall EU-India framework is so important, and that will also set pace and speed as to our bilateral cooperation. So it's about finding the right priorities, but also to be part of something bigger. And there we are happy. We are happy with EU. We are happy with India. And in between, we are navigating, trying to connect wherever it's possible. So connect the dots, the green dots, for a better and greener future. That is our response. Thank you.
Yes, that's a very optimistic note on which to end this very engaging, very intense discussion on the future trajectory of this multifarious partnership between the two growth poles and the largest democratic spaces of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, our eminent speakers, it's time for me to thank you. I mean, I can't thank you enough that you have found time and to contribute your thoughts, take so many questions. What has emerged for me personally is that normally, you know, we have been at it, the India-EU summit process for last several years. Normally after a few columns in the newspaper on the day after of the summit, the stories would disappear completely. But now here we are, 10 days after the summit. And you know how the mercurial and unpredictable the news cycle is. So India-EU engagement has acquired a new traction, a new retention power, a new resonance. I think that's a very good story, that is unfolding story. But to keep this, the momentum on, we have no choice but to walk the talk. Because the past is, of course, glorious in many ways, but also the past is also a lot about the road not traveled, many roads not traveled. And it's time to travel all those roads to where we want to take this mutually empowering relationship. History was created on May 8th when we had the first India-EU summit in 27 plus format. What I personally missed, and a lot of people that hugs and kisses and bonhomie, because it was a virtual thing. After the virtual had its limits. And imagine this, the pageant, the spectacle of our Prime Minister interacting with all 27 leaders gathered in some beautiful place and for a couple of days to talk and flesh out the future. So hopefully we can put the pandemic behind with our combined efforts. And the next summit would be a grand affair with that human touch, which makes all endeavors worthwhile. Also, Excellency, also wish to thank, on behalf of, essentially speaks for the people of India, that European countries have been so prompt with helping out India in this very trying, difficult phase in our nation's life. Some narrow-minded people have been quick to pound the government and to, indulge in broadsides and pointless criticism. Some of them is democracy. Everybody has a right to err. But as French President Emmanuel Macron said at the summit, India doesn't need lessons. And it's good to see. And as Ambassador Stuto was saying, that the big message coming out of this summit was the message of solidarity, the message of walking together, of sharing the present together and scripting a future together. So I think it's all adding up to a very, very optimistic story, full of promise, full of potential. And it is pivoting around several C's: commerce, connectivity, climate, and of course, creativity. I think there is a greater amount of creativity in and also audacity in our trying to push the envelope. So thank you once again for finding time, accepting our invitation, and being graceful enough to stick it out till the end. My profuse thanks to also our fabulous audience, which is always a pleasure. I mean, after all, what are these conferences without an audience? We had a very rich and eclectic audience comprising diplomats, think tankers, business houses, and the rest. And we will be publishing the proceedings of this webinar, this very rich and nuanced conversation, in the forthcoming edition of our India and the World magazine. We'll be getting in touch with you with the version of it, if you like to polish what you said and all that. And it would be great to have you back at another pivotal moment in India-EU partnership. Thank you once again. Thanks so much. And Excellency, my one request, can we have a group photo? Because, when you try to put the photos, we all looking at different sideways. So let's look at front, the smiling face. Again, yeah. And with a victory hand that we will triumph over the pandemic soon. All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Till we see each other again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.